Darth Vader was the most feared Sith Lord who ever lived, and every Sith who came after him hated him for it. His own apprentice hated the master who rebuilt her body and died before finishing her training. His grandson hated the weakness he swore he would never repeat. A Jedi who once called young Anakin Skywalker a friend hated himself for not stopping the boy before the mask went on. A Quarren fleet commander born a century after Endor never knew the real man, only the military records, and copied the choking as if it were scripture. 4 weeks after the Clone Wars ended, the newly armored Sith Lord knelt before a hologram of Emperor Palpatine and received his first real lesson. The Sith Master drew the line between the two orders. The Jedi gained power through understanding. The Sith gained understanding through power. Power would fill the vacuum left by every sacrifice, every loss, every choice that had brought him here. Married to the Sith, the younger man would need no other companion than the dark side. His master left him no other option. Something stirred inside the armored figure at those words. He could not make sense of it, as anger mixed with grief and regret tangled with disappointment. In the Legends novel Dark Lord, the memories of his former life felt like they belonged to someone else. Yet some piece of Anakin kept haunting the Sith Lord, like pain from a limb that was no longer there. He ran through what his own body could and could not do, and every answer came back the same. None of it was living, and he called himself wreckage with power, but no clear purpose. The Sith Code had promised him a path forward. The Force was supposed to set him free. Instead, his chains were heavier than ever. The Force had locked him in a cage. Power without joy was a contradiction Vader could not resolve. He put the question to his master directly. Palpatine's reply came without hesitation and reframed the entire question. Power itself was joy, and the dark side was the only path worth following, whatever it cost the man who walked it. The fallen Jedi never believed it. 20 years later, he would prove it false in the most destructive way the Sith had ever experienced. The Sith Master also made the competition clear from the beginning. Count Dooku had known the risks. If Dooku had been stronger, the younger Sith Lord would be dead, and Dooku would be standing in his place. Vader raised the possibility of someone stronger arriving one day, but Palpatine missed it. There was no one stronger, not even a body held together by machines. Together, the two of them could not be beaten. Vader was not convinced. He had lost to Obi-Wan on Mustafar. He could not cross a room without calling on the Force. In his own mind, he was a servant running someone else's orders, an errand boy, allegedly an apprentice, the public face of a religion he had barely begun to learn. Even at the height of his power, the man in the armor would let a critical blockade at Yavin fall apart because fixing it would mean sharing credit with rival commanders. Personal revenge cost the Empire a chance to end the rebellion early. Palpatine built a weapon, not a partner, and left no one prepared to carry the Sith forward after him. Because his son was dying at Palpatine's hands, Vader turned on his master. On the second Death Star, above the forest moon of Endor, Luke Skywalker was screaming under the Emperor's lightning. In the Legends novel, The Rise and Fall of Darth Vader, the thought that broke the father was simple. Luke was his son, and his son loved him. The armored figure stopped caring about his own future. After every terrible thing he had done, he could not watch the one person who still believed in him die at his master's hand. In that moment, Anakin Skywalker returned, and he grabbed the Emperor and threw him down into the pit below the throne room. The lightning shot back through his own armor, destroying the machines keeping him alive. He ended the Sith the way Sith tradition demanded, with the apprentice killing the master. But he did it for love, not for power. The Sith Code fell apart in a single act. Passion was supposed to bring strength, but his love for Luke destroyed the Sith instead of strengthening them. Victory was supposed to break chains, but he won his freedom by giving up his life. In the end, he found freedom as a Jedi spirit, not as a Sith Lord. Obi-Wan Kenobi later gave the act its meaning. The horror was over. The prophecy of the Chosen One, the boy from Tatooine who was supposed to bring balance to the Force, had been fulfilled in the last act any Sith would have expected. The refusal of the final thing the Sith asked of him. Years earlier, the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn had known why this moment was always coming. The core of Anakin still lived inside the armored shell. It was the reason the Sith Lord would never return to Tatooine, the one place that could wake the buried piece of him. The dark side's greatest weapon had always carried a Jedi inside it, and the Sith had no way to cut it out. Every Sith who carried the legacy of the armored Sith Lord also inherited that hidden weakness without knowing it existed. Luke built a funeral fire in a forest clearing on the moon below. He burned the armor, and with it, the name of Darth Vader. He named Anakin Skywalker a light that should guide the Jedi for generations. The galaxy's most feared Sith Lord was claimed by the Jedi, publicly, permanently. None of Vader's successors inherited the Sith title in the traditional way. Under the rule of two, the only real way to claim the Sith title was to defeat the previous holder. Nobody ever defeated Vader that way. He left on his own terms. Lumiya stumbled into the title with half-finished training. Darth Krayt started over from nothing on Korriban. Darth Caedus was recruited from outside by Lumiya, who never fully prepared herself. Every one of them carried a question next to their name. The Sith Lord's personal legion, the 501st, nicknamed Vader's Fist, was still a feared name more than a century after his death. The unit outlasted every Sith Order that tried to take his place. He became the reference point everyone else was defined against. Padme's children were framed as existing to reverse their father's damage. Luke was framed as existing to undo his father's evil. Even the droid Anakin built as a child on Tatooine was called as much a son of Darth Vader as Luke himself. In Fate of the Jedi Apocalypse, a former Sith apprentice challenged Boba Fett for thinking on a human scale, like Vader or Palpatine. Vader was too small a frame. The threat facing the galaxy demanded a bigger one. Even in death, the fallen Jedi was the standard everything else was measured against. Before Endor, before the funeral fire, Vader had an apprentice most people have never heard of. Her name was Shira Bree. He found her in an Imperial loyalty program, recognized her Force sensitivity, and sent her to infiltrate the Rebel Alliance. She succeeded and nearly died doing it. He recovered her broken body from space and rebuilt her with mechanical replacements much like his own. Her first suit of armor included a voice device and a triangular helmet. She looked disturbingly like the man who built her. She was a walking copy of a dead master. She had his shape, his limits, and his dependence on machines. She served two masters at once. Vader trained her in secret as his shadow hand, while Palpatine used her as one of his hands. Vader never named her his official apprentice. He was training her alongside another candidate named Flint, letting them compete for a title neither would receive. Even ancient Sith artifacts dismissed her. The Sith meditation sphere she used later in life considered her the lowliest of students, because her knowledge was so incomplete. Her name is Lumiya now. She was in the ancient Sith world of Ziost, building a light whip when both Palpatine and Vader died at Endor. She returned to find everything gone. She took the title of Mistress of the Sith by default, the most senior surviving student, despite never finishing her training. She inherited it by absence. Her rage deepened her connection to the dark side, and her Force abilities grew in step with her hatred. In her view, the rebels had torn apart the galaxy's natural order. Its fall was not a political event, but a violation. Yet even after decades steeped in the dark side, she never developed the yellow-orange eyes other Sith were known for, as though the dark side itself never fully accepted her. Grief turned her into something her master had never finished building, and she would spend the next 35 years trying to correct his mistakes without ever questioning the man himself. The cyborg Sith lady took an apprentice named Flint, an ex-stormtrooper. Flint turned back to the light. She took another, partner Jax, a former Imperial Royal Guard. Jax betrayed her and was killed before he could do real damage. The chain of broken replacements kept repeating. Her own mechanical implants limited her Force abilities. The body her master gave her also held her back. Vader had left her training so incomplete that a completely different Sith, a Fosh ex-Jedi named Vergir, had to finish the job decades later. The master who created her could not even be bothered to fully prepare her. She defended the rule of two, the model Vader had served under. When Darth Krayt invited her to join his new order, she refused. She turned him down a second time. She stayed loyal to her dead master's system, even when someone offered her something different. She chose Vader's grandson, Jacen Solo, to finish what had been left undone. Because Jacen needed a crisis large enough to justify seizing power, Lumiya engineered an entire galactic war as a backdrop for his turn. She played Corellian separatists and Bothan nationalists against the Galactic Alliance, manufacturing the Second Galactic Civil War, a conflict that killed millions. Every death in that war was a side effect of her mission to fix what Vader broke. In her version, his grandfather and other past Sith Lords were already broken people before they ever touched the dark side. A different Sith Lord, Darth Vader, was her counterexample. He had used the dark side without being consumed, because he had entered it whole. Vader's failure in her telling was personal. She rejected Leia Organa as a candidate because the fallen Jedi's own daughter was too afraid of her father's shadow. She handed Jason a version of his grandfather's life with the most important part cut out, because including the choice at Endor would have destroyed everything she was trying to build. Once Jason became Darth Caedus, her work was done. She surrendered in a final fight against Luke Skywalker, taking the blame for the killing of Mara Jade Skywalker to protect her apprentice. Her death was her own choice. Her entire life after Endor had been a single mission. Once it was finished, she had no further reason to live. Lumiya's explanation for why her master failed came down to one belief: the man was broken. The system was sound. The grandson she chose to prove that belief would spend his life running from his grandfather's shadow, without ever noticing he was stepping into the same footprints. If you want to see more videos like this one, a quick subscribe means you will always be first to know. Jason Solo did not want to be his grandfather. He wanted to be the fix. He had seen a vision of the future. A dark thing was coming for the galaxy, and only a strong hand could hold it back. He turned to the Sith because the light side was not enough to stop what he had seen. His entire fall was framed as protection, not ambition, and that framing was the trap. He had inherited his grandfather's exact motive without recognizing it. Anakin turned to the dark side to save Padme from a vision. Jason turned for the same reason, one generation later, and did not see the mirror. In the Legends novel Legacy of the Force, Bloodlines, the young Jedi traveled into the past twice through a Force ability called flow walking. He watched his grandfather storm the Jedi Temple with the 501st Legion. He sensed the older man's inner conflict, his obsessive love, his fear of losing Padme, and felt relief that those feelings were not his own reasons for turning to the dark side. He did not carry his grandfather's selfishness. He believed he was the Skywalker bloodline's second chance. He went back a second time and watched again. The fact that he needed to check twice says that he was never fully sure the first time. Even as he denied any resemblance to the armored figure he had seen, he was becoming the man without knowing it. He wore a black cape over his Galactic Alliance Guard uniform. The look reminded people of Darth Vader. He force-choked a subordinate named Major Aspara. He killed Lieutenant Tebbit by fracturing her neck with the Force after she let a Jedi sneak aboard his ship. Word of that killing spread through the fleet and turned his own officers against him. Jason copied Vader's image and methods without seeing the resemblance, still believing a purer motive would spare him from Vader's ending. Lumiya had given him the version of the family history he needed to hear. His grandfather was broken going in. A better man could use the same tools without being consumed. The story of Vectivus proved it was possible. Jason needed his grandfather's fall to be about personal weakness, because if the Sith system itself was the problem, then nothing he did differently would matter. He took the name Darth Caedus. He seized control of the Galactic Alliance. He ran a secret police force. He built the Embrace of Pain, a torture device meant to break prisoners. He modified an interrogation droid designed to inflict pain without killing. He tortured prisoners and grew paranoid. He lost his lover, Tenel Ka. He lost custody of his daughter, Alana. He drove his co-ruler, Admiral Neothal, to defect. He watched his military splinter around him. He held total political power and lost every human connection that made power worth holding. The sacrifice which truly sealed his fall was not what he did to Mara Jade, but losing Ben Skywalker's love and trust. He named himself Darth Caedus only after he realized that loss, not after the murder. His flow walking had another consequence he did not foresee. His interference with the flow of the Force had disturbed something ancient and imprisoned. The vision he was trying to prevent, the darkness he had gone Sith to stop, was set loose by his own hand. A cosmic-level entity called Abeloth walked free because Vader's grandson used the dark side to change a future he was afraid of. His grandfather had turned Sith to save Padme and killed her instead. He turned Sith to save the galaxy and free the thing that would nearly destroy it. Fatally wounded by his twin sister Jaina, Jacen had the power to take her with him. He chose not to. He used his final moments to reach out through the Force and warn Tenel Ka that she and Alana were in danger. His twin bond with Jaina returned at the instant of death, and he spent his final breath on a warning instead of a weapon. He did exactly what his grandfather did. He chose someone he loved over the power he had spent years building. Jacen's final thoughts held no illusions left. He had made the mistakes of every Sith before him, becoming selfish and spiteful and unwilling to suffer for others. The system was the problem all along. After his death, his family softened towards his memory. They remembered Jacen Solo as a hero and mourned what he had become. The version of him that survived among the people who loved him was not the Sith Lord, but the boy he had been before the vision. Jacen's path ended in damnation, while Vader's rejection of the Sith led him back to the Force, and another Sith was already rebuilding the entire order around a different explanation of Vader's failure. The Sith Lord building a rival empire in the shadows did not even consider Jacen a real threat. In the Legacy comics, Darth Krayt dismissed Vader's grandson as a lightning rod, a useful distraction while the one Sith grew unnoticed. Jacen believed Vader had failed because he lacked the resolve to do what the dark side demanded, not because the Sith path itself was broken. Krayt believed something else entirely. Krayt's hatred did not begin with the Empire. It began with a secret shared between friends on a battlefield during the Clone Wars. His name was Asherad Het then. He was a Jedi Knight raised among the Tusken Raiders of Tatooine, and he became close with a young Jedi named Anakin Skywalker, desperate for guidance. In the comics Star Wars Republic, the young Jedi made a confession he had shared with almost no one. He had killed an entire tribe of Tusken Raiders after his mother's death, men, women, and children. He had slaughtered them all. Het removed his Tusken face mask in response. For a man raised among Tuskens, it was one of the most personal acts he could perform. He understood loss and rage, and he knew what it was to break under both. He saw the same thing breaking inside Anakin. Personal accountability was the Jedi virtue Het most deeply held, so he kept the secret. Anakin would face the darkness inside himself and make it right in his own time, in his own way. He would spend the rest of his life wishing he had made a different choice. In the years that followed, the same battlefield would return to him as the moment when the galaxy could have been spared. Turning Anakin in or killing him on Argonar would have prevented suffering beyond imagination. His best Jedi trait, the belief that a man must own his own actions, was the hinge on which galactic history turned. If he had been less principled and more pragmatic, Vader might never have existed. It was the most Jedi thing he ever did, and it opened the door to the worst evil the galaxy had ever seen. After Order 66, Het went cold. He returned to Tatooine and led Tusken war parties against settlers, hunting down the descendants of the people who had raised Anakin's mother. Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated him in single combat and drove him into exile. Broken and without purpose, the former Jedi traveled to Korriban and began studying the dark side. The lie he wrapped around his own actions was that he was only pretending. The dark side was a tool, not a commitment. He was still a Jedi underneath. He was still the man who had shown his face to a boy named Anakin. Every day in the tombs of Korriban, the lie became easier and less true. By the time he emerged from Korriban's tombs, the Battle of Endor had already happened. Luke Skywalker and the Rebel Alliance had finished the job Het had trained himself to do. His revenge was stolen. His entire reason for learning the dark side had vanished, and he wandered into the unknown regions, determined to disappear. He could have come back sooner. Het was aware of the Yuuzhan Vong, the alien invaders who would later kill trillions across the galaxy. He could have warned the New Republic. He stayed silent instead, because speaking up would have exposed his existence. Billions died in a war he might have helped prevent, because his secrecy mattered more than their lives. He was captured by the Yuuzhan Vong. Their biological implants fused with his body, creating a shell of living coral he could never take off. Like the armor his old enemy wore, It kept him alive while trapping him inside himself. Luke Skywalker later found the man's physical appearance comparable to Anakin Skywalker's before the Chosen One was sealed inside his own armor. Het even looked like the boy he had failed to stop. He returned as Darth Krayt and built something no Sith had tried before. His one Sith replaced the rule of 2 with a rule of 1. Many Sith would serve under a single leader, and if that leader died, the Order would survive. His reasoning was direct. Vader's Sith Order had been designed to self-destruct upon the death of its master. 2 people had held the entire tradition together, and when one act of love destroyed both, 1,000 years of Sith history ended in a single afternoon. The old model was fatally flawed. The Sith needed a shared goal, not personal ambition. He gave their hunger for power a purpose beyond itself. The ghosts of the old system did not agree. Krayt called up the stored spirits of 3 ancient Sith Lords, Darth Bane, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Andedu, preserved in ancient recording devices. He asked them for help with his failing body. To all 3, he was a fake, and his order was a joke. Their objection was not personal. Power was an end in itself, in their tradition, and needed no other purpose. The moment Krayt gave the Sith a shared goal, he stopped being one of them in their eyes. They laughed at him as his fear nearly swallowed him whole. He kept a Jedi weapon in a sealed case in his throne room. It belonged to Cole Skywalker, a Jedi Master he respected because Cole stayed true to the Jedi way his entire life. The founder of the One Sith honored the Skywalker who kept his principles. He could not forgive the one who abandoned them. His own body was failing him the way Vader's had. He survived only by placing himself in long periods of stasis, his mind open only to his closest disciples. He feared death the way Vader feared losing the people he loved. He hunted Cade Skywalker, a distant descendant of the same bloodline, hoping Cade's healing abilities could save his failing body. He knew that bloodline was dangerous. He had carried the proof for over a century. He reached for it anyway, because the Sith cannot resist the strongest force in the galaxy, even when the strongest always fight back. Krayt even fought alongside Luke Skywalker, Vader's own son, against the cosmic threat known as Abeloth. He set aside his hatred of the bloodline long enough to use it. Then he turned on Luke the moment the fight was over. His hatred was not blind, but selective, because he could work with the Skywalker who chose the light. He can never forgive the one who chose the dark. Cade Skywalker killed him. Before that, his most trusted advisor, Darth Weirlock, had already tried to end him. Weirlock was loyal to the Order, not to its founder personally, because the system Krayt built was designed to remove leaders whose personal fears put the mission at risk. The system he created to solve the problem he hated most about the old Sith worked exactly as intended. It worked against him. Krayt believed the system itself was the failure, and no individual, however powerful, could have made a broken structure work. A century later, a Sith in the same order would prove there was a way to fail even worse. In the year 137 ABY, over a century after Endor, a Quarren Sith Lord named Darth Azard was given command of the Imperial Outer Rim Third Fleet. In the Legacy Era campaign guide, he had studied the history of Darth Vader and held many of the same beliefs, particularly about military command. Failure had to be punished harshly, or Order would fall apart. He became known for battlefield demotions and battlefield promotions, and officers under him feared rising in rank, because promotion often preceded execution. He copied the method exactly. He force-choked Admiral Shah Dun for failing to capture the Alliance commander, Gar Stasi. His replacement, Admiral Villan, later chose to take his own life rather than face the Sith Lord after his own defeat. Death was better than reporting failure. Azard learned about Vader the way a military cadet learns about a famous general from an old textbook, and the textbook had the most important chapter torn out. He never understood who Vader actually was. He never heard about the confession on Argonar. He never saw the boy behind the mask. He read records of a terrifying enforcer who killed officers who disappointed him, and he turned that description into a way of life. The military history that survived into his era contained nothing about inner conflict or hidden loyalties. It recorded the choking, the terror, Death Squadron's trail of destruction across the Outer Rim. He silenced rival commanders through raw intimidation. He tricked his own squadron leader, Juno Eclipse, into destroying an entire populated planet, then removed her from command when she reacted with horror. He turned a soldier into a war criminal and discarded her for thinking like a human being. When Azard studied that history a century later, what he read was pure enforcement. the surface of a life whose center had already been carved away. One admiral named Piet had learned to use Vader's fear as a weapon. Piet waited until his master was on the bridge to deliver a report about a probe droid on Hoth, knowing his superior Ozzel would dismiss it and Vader would kill him for it. Piet watched Ozzel die with a queasy mix of satisfaction and horror. Command of Death Squadron passed to him in that instant. Vader's terror culture had created officers who turned that terror against each other. Yet the same officers sensed something the records never captured. He had survived not because of his battlefield results, but because of something at work in Vader's own dark mind. After one particular mission, Piet served the Sith Lord with respect, but never with fear, as though he understood the man inside better than anyone in the Imperial Navy. The records kept none of that. Azard did not know Sith history beyond Vader's methods. He did not know what a Leviathan was, an ancient Sith alchemical creation that any real student of the tradition would recognize. He followed Krayt's commands without question. Where the original had plotted against his own master, Azard obeyed without a second thought. He had the cruelty aimed downward at those below him, but none of the ambition aimed upward at the one above. During the killing of the Mon Calamari Council, Azard cut down members of his own Quarren species when they objected. One counselor begged him to stop. The Sith Lord answered by cutting him down. He was not Quarren anymore. He was Sith, and the two identities could not exist inside the same body. He wiped out his own identity to become a command style copied from a man dead for more than 100 years. The killing of the Council was not where it ended. Under his direct command, the Empire began the final protocol, poisoning the oceans of Mon Calamari to exterminate the Mon Calamari species. Vader had stood beside Tarkin when Alderaan was destroyed. Azard supervised the slow extinction of an entire people personally. He reproduced the scale of Vader's violence without any of the internal conflict Vader carried while doing it. Because Krayt sent a force call across the galaxy to every Sith under his command, Azard broke focus mid-combat on Utapau. The break lasted long enough for Jedi Master Wolf Sazin to cut him down. His absolute obedience became the flaw that ended his life. He died for the one quality he never thought to copy from the original, the willingness to defy his own master. 4 Sith, 4 inheritances, 4 failures that looked nothing alike on the surface, all tracing back to the same buried flaw none of them could see. Each successor inherited a different version of Vader. Lumiya knew him personally. Krayt remembered Anakin Skywalker before the armor. Caedus inherited the family legend. Azard inherited only the military record. What they discarded, the conflict, the love, the ability to choose something other than power, was the part that ended the Sith at Endor. Vader's military reputation was built on fear, not ideas, and the record his successors inherited was a story with its heart cut out. Lumiya chose the bloodline and watched Jacen repeat the final act at the moment of death. Krayt chased it across a century, and it ended him. Even Abeloth, a being of near godlike power, targeted the Skywalker bloodline for something deeper than strength. Ben Skywalker was not hunted for his skills, but because he was the grandson of the Chosen One. Alana Solo, the great-granddaughter of the fallen Jedi, killed multiple Sith in combat at the age of 9. The Skywalker bloodline became the most dangerous prize any Sith could pursue, because love remained strong enough to override Sith training at the worst possible moment. Any Sith who tried to claim the Skywalker bloodline eventually discovered it could not be controlled. They all knew it, but they took the risk anyway. The Sith tradition could only produce one answer. Failure always had to be blamed on the individual, because admitting otherwise would collapse the dark side's central promise. Power leads to victory. Victory leads to freedom. If failure were structural, no Sith could survive the admission. Krayt was the only one who broke that thinking. He looked at the tradition and named the structure itself as broken, not the people inside it. The tradition rejected him for it. Every one of them hated Darth Vader for the same reason. Vader proved the Sith system does not work. He did not fail the Sith, he walked away from them. Every Sith who came after spent their entire existence trying to explain why that did not count. Luke burned the armor and gave his father's real name back to the galaxy. It was, and it burned every Sith who stood too close. The transformation of a Jedi Knight into the galaxy's most feared enforcer did not happen overnight. It started decades earlier, with an Emperor who spent years engineering a fall so complete that even Vader himself did not see it coming. So watch this video to find out.